Okay, so the Super Bowl was this Sunday. The Chiefs won. And with every Super Bowl, there's obviously a lot of commercials. And this year, there was a pro Israel commercial that had to deal with, Israel being like, you know, we want the hostages that Hamas has to come home. Just really, pro Israel propaganda, despite the fact that they refuse to even settle peacefully. But the thing is that during the Super Bowl, Israel decided that while they were running a pro-Israel propaganda ad, they decided to bomb Rafah. And just as the article says here, Israel airstrikes kill more than 100 in Rafah. An international alarm, as international alarm mounts over anticipated ground offensive. And we even have a little bit of an update on it. This is a new story that's coming just a few hours ago. Israel to launch Rafah offensive unless hostages home by Ramadan. But we're just going to take a look at this article and then we'll get to this one. Just, I mean, I don't. It's just utterly disgusting because they knew what they were doing. They were hoping that this would kind of get no coverage because the Super Bowl was happening during that time. It's just gross. They knew what they were doing. And it's such a shame that, honestly, the most coverage I saw of this were people just talking on Twitter. I didn't have not seen a lot of major news outlets really talking about this. But I'm just gonna read the article here. Dozens of people, including children, have been killed as extremely intense Israel airstrikes and shelling pounded multiple locations in Rafah overnight Monday. According to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, an international alarm mounts over Israel's planned ground offensive in the southern Gazan city. More than 100 people were killed due to Israeli airstrikes as warplanes targeted different areas of the city and helicopters fired machine guns along the border areas. The Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza said 94 people lost their lives. CNN cannot independently verify each number. The discrepancy likely exists because the health ministry only updates death toll numbers after bodies have been identified. Both groups warned the figure was likely to rise, and the PRCS said people remained trapped underneath the rubble. The director of the hospital said medical facilities in Rafah cannot handle the large number of injuries due to the Israeli occupation's bombardment. Footage obtained by CNN showed a chaotic scene inside Rafah's hospital, with medics trying to resuscitate a motionless child, and another showing doctors treating a wounded man on the hospital floor. In another video, a woman was inconsolable as she held a child's body wrapped in white cloth. At least 2 mosques and around a dozen homes were targeted in the strikes. The Israeli military confirmed it was conducted a series of strikes on what it said were targets in the Chapura area of Rafah, and that 2 Israeli hostages were rescued in a special operation. So you killed 100 people, almost 100 people, around 100 people, for 2 people. Way to go. Look, I'm glad, hostages are back, but at the same time, it doesn't matter when you killed 100 people to do it. IDF spokesperson told reporters that the covert operation to secure the hostages began 1:49 a.m. local time, with the airstrikes on Rafah launching a minute later. In a statement Monday, Hamas condemned that it said it was a horrific massacre by Israel against civilians in Rafah. The Israeli military's attack on Rafah and its horrific massacres against defenseless citizens and displaced children, women, and the elderly is considered a continuation of the genocidal war and the forced displacement attempts it is waging against our Palestinian people. More than 1.3 million people, more than half of Gaza's population, is seeking refuge in Rafah, with the majority of people displaced from other parts of the besieged enclave crammed into a sprawling tent city. There are several shortages of food, water, medicine, and shelter, and the city has been described as a pressure cooker of despair by the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs spokesperson. Rafah has experienced aerial assaults from Israeli forces for months, but Monday's bombardment has heightened fears that an anticipated Israeli ground campaign would result in a bloodbath. Well, unfortunately, those fears are probably come true because Israel seems to be pretty headstrong on launching a ground offensive until hostages are returned. And we have this, article here. Israel will launch a ground offensive in the Rafah area of Gaza unless the hostages still held by Hamas are released by Ramadan holiday in March, Israeli Minister Benny Gantz said on Sunday. Gantz, a member of Israel's war cabinet, pledged that the military would facilitate the evacuation of Gazan citizens in coordination with the U.S. and Egypt in order to minimize casualties. Sure. Yeah, because they're so good at minimizing casualties. An estimated 1 million Palestinians fleeing the fight in Gaza have taken refuge in the Rafah area in the southern part of the territory bordering Egypt. Ramadan, a month-long Muslim holiday, starts in mid-March. So they got a month. I don't really think that's enough time. It really isn't for as many people as they have. They're probably, and that doesn't mean they're gonna stop the bombing either. So to those saying the price is too high, I say this very clearly: Hamas has a choice. Do they? The reason why they did it, I'm not saying it's good that they did it, but the reason why they did it is so they could have bargaining power. They're not just gonna let that go. They're trying to, create negotiations so that they can, reach a peaceful resolution with you so you won't just keep bombing them. Like, it's so dumb. Just, at least, I don't know, just, it would just be so much easier if they just didn't do this. If they literally just were just like, okay, we'll sit down at the table and we'll work something out. And it needs to be that there is no occupation anymore. They can surrender, release the hostages. In this way, the residents of Gaza can celebrate the holy holiday of Ramadan. Where? You bombed their city. You destroyed their homes. How are they supposed to celebrate? You destroyed so much of their lives that they had to force themselves into one city that can barely house them. How do you really expect them to celebrate this holy holiday when where in the tent? Like, there's no coming back from this. This isn't just something like where it can just end and everyone can just return to normal. Like, you destroyed their homes. You destroyed their livelihoods. You killed a lot of them. This isn't something that can just end with a handshake and everyone can go on their own ways. Because they're not going to stop. Israel has never stopped. It continues to kill these people. It continues to just, have them as a stranglehold. Like, not continuing this and just continuing to attack them isn't going to help. Because all this is just going to lead to is just more Palestinians hating Israel and not wanting to work anything. This is so bad. This is such a dumb decision. How do they honestly think this is going to work? I don't think they do. I think they just want to kill these people. I don't really think they care about the hostages. They're using this as an excuse. Because anyone should be able to see getting 2 hostages on an exchange that ends up killing 100 people is a bad trade. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that a ground operation in Rafah is essential for eliminating Hamas's remaining battalions, and that those calling for Israel to stay out of the area are essentially calling for Israel to lose the war. I shouldn't have to say how dumb that is. Like, what war? For the most part, it's just been a slaughter. Like, the number is so exponentially different. Like, how is this even similar? I want to do serious analysis on this and give a educated opinion, but I can't. This is just so obviously bad. How am I supposed to really dig deep into it? Gantz pledged to continue fighting until Israel's goals are achieved, including removing the threat of Hamas, as well as Hezbollah and Lebanon, bringing the remaining around 130 hostages home, and replacing Hamas in Gaza completely. Talks aimed, replace it with what? Isn't Hamas being around is partially Israel's fault anyways. What are you gonna replace it with? I talked about this with the U.S.-Iran deal. There's a reason why groups that are in place in that area really hate the United States. It's because of how much we intervene there and screw everything up for them. So it doesn't matter who you replace in Gaza. That group is filled with a group of people who loathe you, who hate you so much. It's just going to happen again. There's just going to be another Hamas. So the best thing you could do is look to enter negotiations, is enter to look for a peaceful resolution, or else it's just going to repeat itself. This is not how this should be working. Like, you're not going to win this way. They're just trapping themselves in a continuous cycle of hateful group that wants to attack them, that does not like them, that wants to do what Hamas did in search for, the apartheid to end. Talks aimed at securing a ceasefire and the release of the remaining hostages have stumbled in recent days as Netanyahu rejected Hamas's demands as delusional. Yeah, because Hamas is the delusional ones in this case. According to recent surveys, Gates is considered by the public to be the most suitable candidate to become the next prime minister, which is very sad, and his National Unity Party is polling far ahead of Netanyahu's. Gantz also told the Jewish leaders that he opposes unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state, and that following the October 7 massacre by Hamas, such a step is not the way to regional stability and peace. Yeah, sure. Israel just continues to do the worst things that they can do with this. The worst things for them, the worst things for the Palestinian people. And we're going to continue to do nothing but support them, I guess. I know, like, something came out about Biden being like, oh, there needs to be a temporary ceasefire. How about a permanent one? You old geriatric asshole. But again, the ground offensive isn't looking to start until mid-March. They said if the hostages aren't returned by Ramadan, that's when they're going to start. But at the same time, what would really help bring those hostages back before Ramadan? Peaceful negotiations. Looking to end for, just not bombing them. That would probably help. But yeah, that's all I really had to talk about with the Israel situation right now. It's just really gross. And of course, they tried to do this during the Super Bowl, hoping that, not a lot of eyes would get on it. But of course, people noticed. People noticed a lot. I don't know. It's just gross that they continue to get away with this. Because again, while a lot of people noticed, it's not really getting reported on heavily, or at least not in a very scrutinizing way.